Killed by death. While in a hospital with a fever, Buffy encounters a monster that targets children.
We open with Buffy hunting, but she's very sick, and she almost stakes Xander, but unfortunately catches herself.
The others tell Buffy she should go home, but she says she has to make sure Angel doesn't kill anyone else, even though she didn't really seem that concerned about anyone other than her mother before.
And in the middle of the conversation, Angel attacks.
He fights Buffy in a very poorly edited scene and wins, but the others drive him away with crosses before Buffy collapses from her illness.
So at the beginning of this fight, she immediately tried to stake him, which she could have done in the other episode. And she even has moments when she could do it here, but she chooses to make dumb quips instead. And when Angel has her pinned down, the others start beating him up. We've seen non-Buffy people staking vampires. So if these three are already out there, why don't they just have stakes? And while Angel is ignoring them, why don't they just stake him instead of putting a bag over his head and kneeing him in the face? It was a dumb fight on all fronts.
I agree.
As you can tell, this episode got a super high rating from me.
They take Buffy into the hospital in another stupid scene that felt like every generic TV show or movie from the 90s, down to the stupid pestering things that they keep asking the doctor, like, what does that mean? And someone should be with her. How about you let the doctor do their job?
I like how after they immediately hand Buffy over, before the doctor has a chance to say anything, they're like, is she going to be okay?
And the doctor just accepts this patient ahead of everyone else without even asking any questions about her. I'm not a hospital, but I'm pretty sure that's not how they work.
They call Joyce and Giles, and Buffy starts raving about vampires, about how cool they are, and the clothes they wear. So they immediately wheel her into the psych ward, and the episode is over.
If only. And even Joyce acts like a bitch to the doctor.
Is Buffy okay?
We were able to stabilize.
Is she okay?
She's going to be fine.
They sedate her and put her in a room, and Joyce says that Buffy has hated hospitals ever since her cousin died in one when Buffy was 8, and she was the only one with her at the time.
I thought it was funny when Joyce said, oh, it looks like she's sleeping. But they just sedated her. She didn't naturally fall asleep.
Joyce talks to Giles about Miss Calendar dying, and it was kind of an awkward scene, and not just in the way that it was supposed to be. It was some weird dialogue and some weird acting, which was pretty consistent for this episode.
The gang is worried about Angel showing up, and state that Angel can come into public buildings. So now that's been established. But what does that mean exactly? How does hell define what a public building is? Is it a publicly owned building? A building the public has permission to enter? Does a vampire have to read up on the municipal codes of wherever they choose to live? I have questions, but they don't get answered in this episode.
And in the previous episode, they said the reason he could go into the school was because of the welcome message out front. So, which is it? Does that count as a public building? I guess maybe they don't let random people walk in, but they don't really let random people walk into a hospital. I guess you can walk in the front doors of a hospital, but you could probably do that in a school too and go talk to a secretary or something.
Well, in this episode, we don't see it because they're busy, but Spike and Drusilla are actually at City Hall the entire time going through city code to prepare for their next plan.
After they leave, Buffy sees a kid standing in the doorway, and I was afraid this would turn out to be Nightmares Part 2.
And he's followed by some weird dude with a messed up face.
Buffy walks out after them and has a weird dream illusion thing, and I was afraid this would turn out to be Nightmares Part 2. And I didn't get the part where she wakes up in her bed again and walks out again. I thought that was going to be explained later as some kind of weird time recurrence thing, but I don't know what happened.
I thought it was weird that she's just wandering through this hospital and nobody tries to stop her or ask her what she's doing, despite her walking past multiple employees.
Yeah.
While Buffy is wandering around, she hears two doctors arguing about how they're treating the kids, and two kids approach her who are also just wandering around. And you think those doctors would have noticed that because they're standing in the kids' ward.
That's a good point.
So I wasn't sure if those kids were real or not. And they tell her that death comes at night and adults can't see him.
Angel walks into the hospital. How did he know Buffy was there? And Xander challenges him to try to fight through everyone, including the cops, to get to Buffy. And I don't really see why Angel couldn't do it, because it's not like they can kill him. They don't know what to do. They're just cops. But he basically just calls Xander a pussy and leaves flowers for Buffy.
My question is, why aren't all of them wearing crosses all the time?
Yeah, I mean, I would be carrying garlic in my pockets, spray gun with holy water or something, frisbee-sized communion wafers to throw at the vampires. We see some more Buffy memory dreams where she plays with her cousin. Then she wakes up and has seemingly gotten over her illness.
I thought it was lame that the only DC character they could get the rights to use was Power Girl. Come on. The next day, Buffy tells the gang about the argument she heard between the doctors, and apparently this guy is giving the kids weird experimental treatments for the flu. And she also tells them what the kids told her about seeing death.
Willow and Giles go off to discuss the supposed monster and talk about how Buffy may have imagined it. But then Giles says, unless, and the music starts up, so you know he's on the right track.
Unless?
Unless.
Well, sometimes small children do see something we adults don't. Us. Our true selves. Our hidden faces.
I thought it was weird how Giles summarily dismisses that kids could see a monster that adults can't.
Given all the weird supernatural stuff, I would think anything was possible at this point.
Right.
And they decide to investigate the doctor, which to me seemed like a really weird track to pursue. Again, given all the weird supernatural stuff, it would be much more likely that it was a real monster.
Xander and Cordelia are investigating at the hospital.
And Cordelia gets caught, so she has to seduce the security guard while Xander sneaks out with some files. And I thought the security guard's acting was pretty good. I thought he was funny. Then Xander and Cordelia have a little argument, and then we go on to the next scene.
Then Giles and Willow find out that the doctor has a laundry list of ridiculous, over-the-top lawsuits and criminal offenses and all this stuff. And I was hoping they would explain how he's able to work in the medical field at all, let alone the children's wing of a hospital. But they don't. They mention that all of his lawsuits were suddenly dropped, but they never explain why.
Yeah, that was a really weird detail to throw in there without ever coming back to it.
It's called shady writing. You can put that in there. I stand by that statement.
Buffy sneaks around and finds the kid who warned her before, and I was afraid this was going to turn out to be Nightmares Part 2. Then we get some Krispy Kreme product placement and a butt shot of Cordelia as she sits down. I thought that was weird.
And of course the doctor is also seemingly sneaking around in the middle of the night giving kids injections of weird yellow stuff.
And Buffy spies on the doctor as he is killed and dragged away by something invisible. It's about time we saw Marcy again, or didn't see her.
Yeah, that would have been awesome if the entire thing was not actually a monster, but this group of invisible assassins from that other episode. The next day,
apparently nobody told Buffy that she was going to be leaving.
Buffy chooses to completely destroy her mother's finances by staying in the hospital for longer than necessary, while Giles and the rest of the gang continues to investigate. When the gang is deciding what they want to do next, I like Giles' reaction to having to team up with Cordelia.
Why do I have to have... Good thinking. I could do with a research assistant.
And I didn't understand why he was teaming up with Cordelia. I mean, I guess it was just there for comedic purposes, but it didn't actually make any sense.
I think you just described the episode. Maybe that should be your synopsis statement.
Buffy sneaks into the dead doctor's office with Willow. Willow finds information that supposedly shows that the doctor was actually trying to help the kids, but the stuff she says he was doing doesn't make any actual sense.
Dr. Backer was trying to inoculate the kids with a controlled dosage of the same virus they already had.
If they had the virus at the time, giving them more of it wouldn't make them immune. If it was a virus they had had before, and they didn't build an immunity to it in the first place, that could potentially work, I guess, but it seems very unlikely. But then Willow says, as if explaining,
Or raising their temperatures to burn the fever out of them.
And that makes no sense, no matter how you look at it. And it doesn't have anything to do with the first part of the explanation anyway.
To burn the fever out of them. Oh my god, he's drowning. Quick, throw some water on him. I'm trying to think of other ones now that would work. He's bleeding to death. Give me a saw so I can chop his arm off.
The house is on fire. Quick, grab the flamethrowers.
Oh my god, I'm watching a terrible TV show. Put Buffy on.
That might be too much. I don't know if I want to use that one.
Giles and Cordelia are trying to find out what this monster is, and Cordelia finds out that it's a demon that feeds on kids.
And when she calls Buffy, I thought the start of the call was really funny.
It's called Der Kindestod.
Who is this?
And after hearing how the monster kills kids, Buffy realizes that her cousin was killed by this demon.
Subplot resolved.
What good writing.
Buffy decides the reason she and the kids could see the monster was because of the virus, so she goes to get some from a fridge in the hospital. And luckily, this is the least secure hospital there has ever been.
And she chooses to ingest a random amount of an experimental virus drug thing. And when Willow stops her, and you think she's going to use logic to come up with a better plan, she comes up with an equally stupid idea. She says, oh, it's too concentrated, we have to dilute it, and then takes a random amount of water, drips a random amount of the virus in it, and then Buffy drinks it, so now it's safe.
They go to find the kids, but it turns out they've escaped into the basement.
By going through the basement access door, which is literally right next to their bed. And not locked, apparently.
And as Buffy gets sicker, she becomes able to see the monster, who reminded me of the Jeepers Creepers guy. Way to remind me of some shitty movies. Thanks a lot. A nurse calls for security when Buffy refuses to go back to her room and shoves her away violently, and Willow distracts them by yelling about frogs, which was the most ridiculous, unexpected thing, and of course it works.
And Buffy manages to make it down to the basement.
Right as the monster is about to suck the life out of a kid in the weirdest way possible.
She manages to save the kid and starts fighting the demon, and the pacing of this fight was very jarring and dumb.
Yeah, the action scene editing in this episode was really bad.
And then the fight is just over.
When she snaps its neck.
And she just assumes it's dead and leaves it down there without any further investigation. Good job.
Yeah, I mean, are people going to be tripping over a dead invisible monster now?
And it is a demon. How does she know that's how you kill it, or it's fully dead?
Later, Buffy is sick and at home, and Xander and Willow are also there, and I thought all three of them were going to be sick, but they're not. They're just hanging out with a sick person, which is weird.
And Joyce brings in a letter from the kid Buffy saved earlier,
who got her address somehow, and it turns out to be a drawing of her.
But the level of artistry was way off from the picture before, so I doubted it was actually from that kid.
Was it? Are you serious?
Yes. The first one looked like a Courage the Cowardly Dog monster, and the second one looked like something I drew.
I thought it was alright. I don't know.
Well, your standards are extremely low.
I just appreciated the level of blood and gore.
Uh-huh.
Killed by death. Overall,
the idea of the monster and the base story had merit, but the execution of this episode was so dumb. So many questions, not to mention just bad writing in general. People seemingly having free will to walk through any part of a hospital at any time. Stealing protected health information with absolutely no repercussions. Drinking a random experimental drug virus solution. Having absolutely no follow-up with that doctor who got killed. I mean, even increased security would have been nice. Just leaving that demon down there in the very poorly maintained hospital basement. Having Angel not actually do anything. Having the basement access door right next to the kids' beds and not even locked. The list just goes on and on. It was like someone was tasked with writing this episode, and when somebody pointed out when something didn't make sense, they would respond with, "Why are you telling me about it? I'm not a writer, jeez."
That doesn't make sense, but okay.
Yeah, I know. There were so many assumptions made by the characters that didn't make sense. There were so many actions taken by the characters that didn't make sense. So much of this episode didn't make sense. And at no point, nobody went to any of the parents of these kids to express their concerns, which kind of bothered me too. This episode was so bad. I gave this episode an F+.
Okay. I had given it a C-, but I'm going to lower it to a D+. Like you said, there were a lot of little things in this episode that didn't make sense, and the main story definitely felt like something that didn't really matter. Trying to tie things in with Buffy's cousin's death felt like something that should have been more important than it ended up being. It seemed like they just kind of forgot about it once you found out what was really behind it. Even Buffy's fear of hospitals didn't really matter, it was just kind of mentioned. Angel popped in a couple times, and like you said, didn't do anything. He was just kind of there, like a lot of things in this episode. The monster was weird, and that's about all there is to say about it. The editing of the fight scenes was so bad. I was really just confused about why it would be like that. The only thing I thought was really good was the humor. There were more humorous bits than usual, and I thought they worked better than usual. But that's not enough to carry the episode, and I would definitely recommend skipping this one.
Looking forward to more good episodes like this for the rest of the season.
Me too.